Welcome, and thank you for joining the very first episode. In the US these days, we tend to disagree with each other on many issues, but we may agree on a few that actually matter much more. So today, let's see if we can all agree on fake news. We have more access to information than we've ever had, but how can we know what to trust? We'll look at why we have good reason to skeptically consume our news, and how we can determine what's sound enough to pass along to loved ones. Robert Anton Wilson greatly influenced the way I process information now. I was reading my first book of his when 9/11 happened. I realized then, as I do now, how much his writing prepared me to navigate through the scary uncertainties we found ourselves in then and do now. These shocks that we share made us more dependent on the news than ever before, and more open to imprints that impact our personalities and behaviors. I'll be referencing him throughout the show. We have to remember that most news shows work as businesses that focus on what sells. If it bleeds, it leads. They're going to want to get us wrapped up in dramas and action that rile our passions and fears to keep us tuning in so their ratings stay high and they keep those advertising dollars coming in. What they focus on may not relate to our lives so much as captivate our attention. Can they prove or disprove anything? How much are they just speculating? And to what end? At best, experts share what we may expect to fill the 24/7 news cycle when there's no new information. At worst, it could be designed to push us towards behavior independent of facts. For example, in the 2000 presidential election Republican primaries, Karl Rove had interns call prospective John McCain voters to ask them if knowing that McCain had a Black love child would impact their votes. He didn't, and they weren't saying that he did, but just by asking, they did impact their votes. My good friend Anoka, who made this awesome background, also shared an exercises he uses of dividing news into information and opinion as he watches. When I started doing it, I found it really helped me identify and weed out shows that caused me to get more frustrated and lose patience with friends who disagreed by emotionally echoing back all my opinions. I try to reflect on if I'm reacting on instinct, logic, or conditioning and find them difficult to untangle, especially considering quotes like this. In almost every act of our lives, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind. Now, he may sound like a conspiracy theorist, but he's actually known as the father of marketing. So he was actually one of the they pulling the wires. He also literally wrote the book on propaganda. He's the nephew of another famous father, the father of psychology, Sigmund Freud. As soon as we begin to understand our unconscious drives towards behavior, Edward Bernays is begging his uncle to teach him how to use the insight to sell us stuff. His first big victory was for the tobacco company. They wanted to double sales by appealing to women when smoking was taboo among them. Only whores smoked cigarettes till Edward Bernays applied penis envy and had every independent, successful woman in TV and movies smoking cigarettes with long filters, brandishing their torches of freedom. He also was paid by government to corral public opinions towards buying whatever stories they were selling to get us to behave in mechanized ways. Wilson said, a monopoly on the means of communication may define a ruling elite. And over the past few decades, we've seen ownership of news organizations condensed into fewer and fewer hands. There are about 6 companies that own most now, and Sinclair Broadcasting Group has been buying up many of the remaining local news sources that are still dedicated to integrity and journalism. We have to consider that companies own these news businesses, advertise through them, donate to them, and donate to politicians. Thus, we may never know lots of really vital information directly relevant to our lives because it reflects negatively upon any of those companies or politicians. You can see many of these correlations on opensecrets.gov, a source I love and will link below because it's like if accountants wrote the news. They just show you the money and let you make your decisions. Wilson continues, since man extends his nervous system through channels of communication like the written word, telephone, radio, TV, or social media, etc., he who controls these media controls part of the nervous system of every member of society. So keep that in mind as we look at the logo of Cambridge Analytica, modified slightly in this cartoon, but the points connecting the one group or groupthink are literally their logo. The contents of these media become part of the contents of every individual's brain. They had an alarming impact on voter beliefs and actions in the 2016 election. They did this by using our personal data, which Facebook sold them, and applied algorithms to determine our voter identities and group us based on the issues we showed them mattered the most to us. Then they knew when, where, and how often to target us with customized messaging to push us in the direction they were paid to push us without us even noticing. Media manipulation of mass opinions and behavior continues advancing with the technology, so we must carefully consume it. We can inspect our media by first considering the source. I love using this tool, Media Bias Fact Check, to look up sources of articles before sharing them on social media. It rates the bias in the reporting from extreme left to right and the accuracy of the information based on the source's history of fact checks. They break down their methodology, and their ratings coincide with my experiences with those sources. Guess the source here, CNN. Fox also rates as mixed reporting with a right bias. Then in each report, I keep an eye out for fallacies in reasoning. I look for these sleight of mind techniques that distract us away from the lack of evidence to support a claim. When people use these, their arguments probably don't hold water. I'll do a whole other video on these another time because they're a great tool. We should also consider what reporting omits, especially in data. We trust numbers don't lie, but they can be creatively displayed to show whatever we seek to prove. You can pause here if you want to guess causes of death before the big reveal. Here we can ask, where is the data from and where did the deaths take place? What year, or was it assessed over an average of years? Then we see smoking and obesity as leading causes of death, but they're often cofactors for heart disease. So how many of these are the same people? Is that why this is faded? We should never accept any info as the end all on a subject. We should always have more questions about what we may still not know of the matter. It's important to remember that we don't have to be naive chumps to be influenced by our media. I catch myself getting tricked often. We've all experienced our minds playing tricks on us. And on top of our eye-brain connections, we're dependent on tools that we observe and measure with that have limitations and can have defects. We're also influenced by the images we see most often in media, programming bias in us, in addition to memories of media or actual experiences setting our expectations, and our unique upbringings, all filtering or skewing our individual points of view. We should consider how what we feed our minds affects our well-beings. Through our minds, we experience everything within and outside us, and our perceptions, no matter how reasonable or crazy, all affect each other's reality as much as they do our own. We seem to live in parallel universes of perception that violently collide at times. So we should consider how any media in our diet is affecting our relationships with people we know we love. Robert Anton Wilson said, communication is only possible between equals. And I believe if we don't regard each other as equals, we're only talking at each other and forgetting how to talk with each other. We could achieve so much more if we had hard talks with people we love who have different opinions than us, instead of preaching to the choirs of those who have the same opinions as us, feeling victorious about how right we are. I also hope we can all agree that we should make sure to verify what information we share with our loved ones is as solid as they depend on us to be for them. We never know how much we influence the people in our lives, so we may want to weigh the responsibility that comes with that power. I look for sharing more points where we may come to agree and what's important to us all. In the meantime, we have to remember that we can never see the whole picture and must make do with what we understand, knowing each understanding we have can't be complete. So I think it's healthy to doubt everything while still giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. Thank you.